G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today we are reviewing the first round after the bye rounds have finished, and there's a lot happening. Lots of teams played. It's time to break it all down. Let's go!
Hodge has done it from nowhere. Busted the goal from inside the 30. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy. And I'm joined, as I usually am, on a Monday afternoon, reviewing the round by my co-host, Luke Rogerson, coach of the mighty Ox Longs. All right, are you still the Ox Shorts, mate?
Still the Ox Shorts, mate. Still, but I have realised something in the last couple of weeks. I think I've missed the premise of the game because while everyone else's team's been getting better, mine's actually been getting worse with each of the trades that I make.
It's that time of year,
but
mate.
Now that I've alerted myself to this,
Okay.
I'm going to refocus, and I'm actually going to start to try and make my team better with the trades that I make.
Okay, yeah. So you've been So no. Yeah, try and make it better.
I missed the point, unfortunately. But now I think I'm.
Well, that's good that you've caught on to
calibrated.
that because maybe some of the other listeners out there might have got that mixed up as well. As I'm sure.
Hopefully, we didn't bring anyone down with us.
It's common this time of year because I nearly made my team worse on the weekend as well with some of my trades.
It's the time of the year to do it.
So yeah, we'll get stuck into that. How did you pull up on the weekend? You had a tough loss to one of the informed coaches in the Content Creators Cup at the moment.
Yeah, Sanch gave me the unlubricated fisting like Jeff did.
A couple of fistings in the last couple of weeks.
I'm in a bloody rough way. I only scored the 21.65, which is well below par, and lost about 400 spots. So I'm just yo-yoing there in the 2K, like in the 2000s, 2,650.
It's a tough little spot there that when you're in the 2K spot. Sort of
just bouncing around.
Up one week, down the next.
It's hard. Like, I'm definitely watching in the content creators and then obviously watching your team is just keep getting further and further away. So it's kind of only so much ground to be made up. And it's exemplified by the Jordan Clark in 2 weeks ago when I could have had Caldwell. I think that kind of sums up where I'm at.
There's a couple of key moments in your season. The going Tom Green instead of Luke Ryan with that Sheasel trade. And then I think this most recent one going Jordan Clark instead of Jai Caldwell.
Well, I did it. The irony of all of that was that I thought, I had Caldwell in the team. And then I thought, I'll go Jordan Clark because I don't really trust in any of those defenders that were in the price bracket I was going to shop in. Because I thought, Josh Simpkin. He's the guy in the forward line.
You'll have a target at least.
Lock him. He'll score similar to Caldwell. Josh Simpkin, easy. He's better rolls. The CBAs are there.
And then he puts 100 points on him. So
yeah. So, that's where it's at. But, we're rooting for Mitchmond.
Yeah, so I scored a 23.67, which moved me into fourth place, so top five now. Although I did lose ground on the first place team, which is a new team actually. Luke's Dogs now he had a big week, so he pipped me by.
I might just claim that that's my team.
It must be. The
Luke. Dogs.
Yeah, the old Dogs.
Get around me, the Dogs.
So yeah, he got me by 22 points. It looked like it could have been a lot worse until the second last game where Nick Newman salvaged that a little bit for me. But yeah, he traded in Josh Dunkley. He didn't have him last week. Traded him in from a Jordan Clark the week before. So great trade, which rocketed him up into first place. So 146 points behind first place with now 8 rounds to go. It's a tough task, but still doable. I mean, we'll see how things go. But fourth place, very, very happy. And in the Content Creators Cup, managed to beat MJ. And the longer my win streak is going in that, the more I feel like a dud is around the corner. Someone's going to get me in the finals over there. But anyway, special shout out to infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy. You can go to get your free gift from Infinite Wealth and Guesty there, who sponsors the Content Creators Cup. So free gift valued at nearly $3,000 for every AFL fantasy coach who wants to check that one out. Hit that link in the description. But let's talk about some awards for the week, Luke.
Absolutely. Should we kick it off with the sponge of the week?
Let's go positive.
Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
SpongeBob SquarePants!
Absorbent and yellow and porous is he.
SpongeBob SquarePants!
Who was absorbent and yellow and porous this week?
Well, anytime I reckon you get a quadruple double you qualify for Sponge of the Week. And Josh Dunkley.
What stats are you counting? Marks?
Well, I said triple-double on Twitter because disposals, marks, and tackles. But you could call it a quad-double because kicks and handballs. But really...
Oh, no. We just can't. I reckon triple-double.
It's a triple-double.
Yeah.
All right. So he's got a triple-double. He's got the disposals, the tackles, the marks. And that's just the Josh Dunkley special right there.
That is so good, eh?
So I think he had 70 points at halftime. And I saw a story, actually, Ellie was telling me the other day, that the coach, Fags, at halftime put the stats of Melbourne's midfield up on the whiteboard and the stats of Brisbane's midfield up on the whiteboard and said that they were getting smashed. And so challenged his group to rise in the second half, and he did. So he went 70 in the first half and then put another 88 points on it in the second half. So... thanks, Fags, for that.
He's an all-rounder, Dunks.
It was a great sponge if you had him. If you were going against him, he was unique when you're trying to fight for a car. It was not the start to the week you wanted. But
do you think you're going to get him in at some stage, or is he one you might try and go against?
It's a tough one because up until this point, his ceiling actually wasn't all that high. He had that one ceiling game where he played in Gold Coast where they had no bench, which felt a little bit anomalous.
Yeah, it's like it inflated.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. So but now he's gone and put up his best score of the season. So
we're just making words up.
I don't know. Yeah, get us a thesaurus in here or something. Can't even say it. And then you just had Ashcroft come in. So I thought, okay, well, Ashcroft, is that going to upset the mix in there? He didn't really do too. Obviously, went and scored well. So undecided there, but he's definitely put his hand up as a top 8 mid. I think, obviously, for this point on. Let's talk about the camel of the week, and this one hits close to home.
It does. I don't even know if I want to do it.
My hump, my hump, my hump, my hump, my hump.
We have to do it.
You know what? I said I didn't want to do it, but the minute I heard that song come on, I was just like instant momentum.
We have to do it. Hayden fucking Young.
Oh my gosh, what was this?
Our boy. Well, I'm going to have to disown him now because this was 2023 Hayden Young.
We're getting emancipated from our boy.
This is dodging pill Hayden Young here because...
Is that the right word?
Maybe.
We use words with confidence that we have no idea.
Don't question it. People won't think twice about it. But 37 points, Luke. And because he's so popular, everyone has Hayden Young.
Yeah.
When I'm watching a Freo game, I'm not even looking for him. I'm just like, okay, it's Hayden Young, everyone's got him, so I'm not even watching him.
Yep.
So when I looked at the scores at the end of the game, I was shocked because, again, you're not watching him closely, you just, he's 90 to 100 every week. 37. And looking deeper into it, his role has changed over the last couple of weeks. He kicked 3 goals the week before, which kind of
should have been a little indicator.
A little indicator, but put a little bit of a tape over the crack there. But yeah, is this the 2023 quenched Hayden Young back? Because that was what we were saying. We were comparing him to Nick Dacos last year. And compared to Nick Dacos, he was the most camel of all players.
Sorry, at the start of the year.
Yeah.
He had humps for days, didn't he?
Are we worried?
Yeah, I mean, I am worried. The thing that perhaps... No, actually, I'm not even going to say that. I'm worried.
Yeah, and they had a big win. So,
but see, I'm worried for. There's like 15 players in my team I'm worried for. So I was going through. I think I saw a good tweet from the Statesman actually just before we jumped on, which was something to the extent of my completed team has 15 players that I want that I want to ditch, and it resonated with me because I look at the team and I looked at it this morning and just thought,
hey, you got the Tookster in there.
Where do I start? So how many rounds have we got to go, Mitch?
8.
Okay, is that enough rounds to get rid of Jai Simpkin, Zach Fisher, Alex Sexton, Connor Rozee, Took Miller, Tom Green, Andy Brayshaw,
Tom Green,
LDU, Lockie Whitfield. No, Lockie Whitfield's safe now.
160.
Nick Martin, Hayden Young. I'm telling you, I've got like 10 fingers up.
Yeah. You're going to have to do 2 a round. There's got to be a few weeks where 2 of them go.
I'm going to have to rob a bank to do it then.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
depressing.
Maybe Hayden Young sticks around for you there.
I love the way you're just like, you're fucked. I got nothing for you, man.
You can try your best, mate. But yeah.
Try your best. That's what I love doing.
Well, hopefully this is the bigger bit of a rocket because recently we send out these camels. And, these Camel Awards, and people respond usually. Now, Hayden Young's responded to last year us giving him basically rockets every fucking week.
Yeah.
And this year he's been good. So hopefully he can respond for everyone who has him, which is basically everybody.
They got a sneaky little good run coming up.
They do have a really good run. So they've got the Richmond Cones this week. So the problem is, though, when you're a Camel in that team, when there's so many sponges, Luke Ryan, Brayshaw, he's a camel. He's a sponge. You've got Jordan Clark. He can be spongy. You've got Sarong in there, Brayshaw. All these guys, they love the pill. Yeah. Hayden Young's just happy to go, just have all humps over here.
Take the dub.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit worried about our boy there. Let's head into some BOGs in Flogs.
And the winner of the Norm Smith medal.
You're an embarrassment to what you do, mate. You're an embarrassment.
Starting with Brisbane versus Melbourne with a close game, to our surprise. And I feel bad for Melbourne because I feel like they deserved to win it. But unfortunately, went down in the end. Best on ground. It's got to be the sponge of the week, obviously.
Yeah, there's no secret. Josh Dunkley getting it done, so he gets the bog for that one.
I could have gone a few different ways for the Flogs for this game, but I've gone Trent Rivers, mostly because I think, and this is, I'm maybe also a bit of a flog here, because I was keen on him, and I gave out some advice saying that he was a good cheap player, and look, there was a few things that could have gone his way. His score would have been a lot better. Like he had that goal that he kicked, I think it was in the first or second quarter, where he ran too far. You go from a +9 to a -3. Already that puts you at an 80, essentially, for his score. So there's one player that swings the score a lot. And he had a really low time on ground. So it sucks. It's not the player you wanted to trade in, and it might be a case of straight back out. But yeah, just a flog for tricking us, I guess, and having a poor matchup, even though they were competitive, which was the other shame. He looked good at times, but the score just was not there.
First game on Saturday was an important one for the weekend because there was a lot of people waiting on the Bontempelli, and I hope that Bontempelli gets diagnosed with an illness, an ailment, or something every week. Diagnose the shit out of that guy.
Yeah, I think he's got a sore knee or something. That's what I heard.
He loves it. Next will be leather poisoning because every time he comes out and there's something wrong, there's something right.
I remember back when I first started playing fantasy, Patrick Dangerfield was one of the premiums up there, and the traders, affectionately called him Drama Field. Maybe Bont is this version now. He's the new Drama Field. He just
could well be
comes out with scores
off it. And honourable mention there to the X-Meister, because I know you were watching this one, just really kicking yourself. Was
that his best score of the year?
You traded the X out, and he went for what was it, 128?
129.
129. And I know you had Romar, and you were hoping for a big ceiling.
His best score of the year. Tied best score of the season.
But I don't mean to be the bloke that said I told you so.
Yeah, you did. You did.
The X-Meister can go big.
Yeah, he's a sponge. And he kicked a goal and everything. Like, that's only his, fourth or fifth game of the season where he's kicked a goal, 20 touches. Yeah, well, shout out to the X-Man.
He gets a little shout out. We'll talk about Romar a bit later.
Yeah, flog LD useless or LDFU, which I also heard someone call him the other day. I thought that was pretty clever, pretty funny. He's in your side, and he's overstayed his welcome, I think, in a lot of other people's sides because he's put up the middle finger to fantasy coaches right now.
He really has, and I wrote the article for DT Dreamteam on LDU pre-season, and I was really hyped on him, as were a lot of people. Yeah. I just think he had shown enough history in the past where he's like one of those guys you think, he's going to break out, he's going to break out, he's going to break out.
I don't think it's happening.
And, I've just been
He's just a
disappointed.
good player. He's just hasn't got those fantasy chops, I don't think, which is disappointing. Very disappointing.
Now, it might have been the game of the round, but Sydney and Freo. What do you say?
Sydney and Freo, yeah. Best on ground. Who have we got in this one here?
How about you do the flog first for this one?
Well, the flog for this one is Errol Goulden because he was high on everyone's big boys, everyone's captains, and rightfully so. He's basically averaging 145 the last 3 weeks. And this is where I sometimes, I've got... You take into account form, but I also think sometimes it gets overhyped as well because obviously other coaches see this, and I don't think that was the case here, but you can only be so good for so long. But he had 21 points at halftime.
That's nuts.
That is just... He'll have that in 5 minutes in some games. And then he plays a lot of minutes. That's a big shame. And if you went like the VC max into Errol, which I'm pretty sure the old Pirate Calvinator did, which is very, very defensible, like the best scoring player in the comp, into the form player of the comp, very, very understandable captains, so that would have burnt a lot of people.
For sure. And the reason that I've put Errol's last quarter as the bog for this game is because I know it's an 80 at the end of the day, but for those people that did have a captain...
What did he have?
I'm taking 80 over what you might have, which could have been somewhere like a 50.
Yeah, he saved that score, didn't he?
There's huge. He had a 43-point last quarter.
43 points, and if you had the C on him...
Yeah, it's enough to give him the bog for his last quarter, but not good enough from Errol.
Yeah, Gold Coast versus Collingwood, cracking game this one. The Gold Coast Suns, our second team, we've dubbed them.
Yeah. Noah Anderson at home.
Noah Anderson at home. Well, Suns at home, Anderson at home.
He just
What's
has
the go?
He has a thing about going big at home. So 140, I think it was in the end.
Yeah, yeah.
He can have the bog for this one. Who's got the flog?
The flog for this one goes to Jack Crisp. Now, he was playing so well, and then the cavalry came back, and because he was playing so well, it was sort of like, give him another week, give him some time. He goes a sub 80 score, 79 points, and he doesn't have a single mark in this game, which is not like Jack Crisp. He loves spreading for those plus sixes, but when the whips were cracking, Jordan De Goey, Pendlebury, Dacos were the main three in the middle there, especially late in the game when it was really, the heat was turned up. So, yeah, it makes a very interesting conundrum for Jack Crisp and the people who have him in their side, because he was going so well up until that point. Do you give him another game? Is this just a blip on the radar, or is this a sign of things to come with those other players coming back in? So he's a flog for just asking too many questions for people at this time of year.
I think it's a really tough debate too, because you go, okay, the cavalry's back, but did that just kind of coincide with a bad game for him? And then that's exactly where the questions come from. You go, oh, was it just a bad game? Because he's still at the CBAs, so he's still
23 CBAs, 81% time on ground. There was a clear sort of top three, and De Goey was sort of that fourth guy there at 12. But I did just find it interesting to note that De Goey was in there very much at the dying stages of the game.
I watched patches of this game too, and I will say that, especially from a Collingwood perspective, this game had a lot of slingshot written all over it. There was a lot of D50 to forward 50 from Collingwood, where maybe there wasn't the opportunity for that marks. And even looking at the stats there, like the top 6 mark getters on the field are all Gold Coast players. So highest mark getter for Collingwood's 5. So, maybe there's something to be said for just the way that game panned out, but interesting one for sure.
Yep. Let's go to Adelaide versus GWS. Big one. Pretty stiff not to get the Sponge of the Week award here.
Yeah,
but
Lockie Whitfield getting it done. And Lockie Whitfield, he's, from where he was 3-4 weeks ago, he's come back into calculations for top 6 defender.
Another one I feel bad on, because going into that round 12 round, we were saying, no, don't get him in, because he was coming off those poor scores then. Yeah. But since then, he's gone big. Bang. He might be walking into a tag this week, but after 160... you'd almost take that at this point of the year. So,
for sure.
Flog, there wasn't too many Flog scores in this one, but I've given it to Rory Laird's role, which I thought it was secure the previous 2 weeks, but he moved back into the midfield, and that sounds a bit weird, but I think I liked him a bit better off that halfback, or at least a split between halfback and midfield, and also his time on ground came back down to the 70s again, which is probably the big flag for him. He sat off the last sort of 4 or 5 minutes there as well, which probably got him into that 70% tog. So I traded him in, unfortunately, and it's a tough one because I don't know how urgent he is to maybe get out, or if I stick with him for a bit longer. So, yeah, a bit of a tough decision there if you traded him in like I did.
Geelong and Essendon, Jai Caldwell gets the Bogs. Much as I hated every second of it, I have to give him his props.
He's been a gun. That time on ground, mate.
Well, we never disputed it, did we? But, I was just a little bit stubborn a couple of weeks ago, and it cost me. Who's the flog for that one?
Flog I'm giving to Nick Martin. 79 points on 27 touches. 2 marks and 1 tackle. So we've become accustomed to him scoring pretty regularly in the hundreds here. Yeah. I didn't watch this game because was it at the same time as another game?
Yeah,
there's a lot of overlaps. Yeah, so I didn't watch this game, but I've heard that it was a bit wet, so potentially maybe a little bit of an excuse for the lack of marks there, which he normally does get. But again, just asking questions this time of year. We don't necessarily want that. St Kilda versus Port Adelaide, best on ground.
I'm giving it to Rowan Marshall, but this I think presents a really interesting conundrum for you, because the way he got it was not how you were expecting it. So you got saved a little bit here.
I did get I hate to use the K word, but I got kissed in a way, but also not in a way.
Yeah, because this week you're now considering, well, if Tom Campbell becomes a regular fixture, well, Rowan Marshall's not going to kick 3 goals every week and dominate at full forward.
Maybe we'll talk about him later, but fucking Tom Campbell, why? Why, Luke? Why are we putting this 50-year-old looking man... Have you seen him play, and what he looks like? He looks like an old man out there.
Don't discriminate based on looks, mate.
Gets around like...
Oliver could get Pill last year.
Yeah, mate, I don't know. But I don't know why he's in the team. And I'm worried the fact that Roma kicked 3 goals and looks good means they're going to persist with a bit more of him playing forward. Now, it's all good and well that he scored 119, And even when Olmay got subbed out, he only scored like 20 points in the last quarter. But anyway, I was cheering those goals on hard, I'll tell you that much.
I can imagine.
And that was his career high, actually, there as well. I could have gone to Tom Campbell with the Flog Award, but I'm going to give it to Dan Houston for this game, putting up his worst score for the season. And this is as fucking Dan Houston as it gets. 47 points against the St Kilda matchup, Luke. Some people captained this man. And if you put the captaincy on him, you could be forgiven. And this is why he wasn't in the big boys. The projections had him high, but I didn't want him to be a captaincy for me. It would have been a great vice captaincy.
Yeah.
But I could never trust Dan Houston with my captaincy because he does shit like this, and it sucks.
And we've kind of been waiting for it all year because he's had a decent year.
We thought maybe things had turned, but no, it's the same old Dan Houston.
Yeah.
You can't trust him. Flog for that award. That's a quintessential Flog move.
That's killer. Richmond Carlton is a great matchup for anyone who plays Richmond, but I've given it to Newman instead of Walsh just because for those people that have Newman, he is a pod. So I think that people would have been really, really happy with the big score there, but Walshy obviously scored well too.
Yeah, Walshy, a lot of people might have captained him there. I was saying to some people who had the captaincy on Romar to switch to Walsh, and thankfully that worked out pretty well. Flog goes to Jacob Hopper for his effect on Tim Taranto. Taranto kicked a goal and still only scored 92 points, 2 marks and 2 tackles, just isn't going to get it done. And I think we're going to have to wait and see this out a little bit before we launch on Taranto, before we can confidently say that the Taranto and Hopper thing isn't real, because at the moment it does look like it is.
Breeze through this last game because I think that outside of Will Day, it was very much largely irrelevant and most people probably tuned out. But Dylan Moore, a bit like a yo-yo at the moment, but he had a really good score despite 0 CBAs two CBAs, I think it
was a target of mine, didn't pull the trigger, but went well. And Elliot Yeo, I'm giving the Flog because some of us might have been looking at him as a cheaper option and shit the bed. 13 touches. That's just not good enough. Still had the 7 tackles, which he's been tackling well, but 13 touches not going to be enough. Let's talk some strategy. So I want to talk for this time of the year about some fixturing.
Yeah.
Look at some scale of hardness, some DFS Australia fixturing, and some good and bad fixtures, and what does this mean? The first and probably major discussion point is Freo's next 3 to 4 rounds. They have probably the best run over the next 3 to 4 weeks, especially for defenders and also for midfielders. But defenders is where it gets really, really juicy. So over the next 3 games, they go Richmond, Hawthorn, Melbourne, which are all bright green on the scale of hardness. Richmond and Hawthorn are pretty much on level with the St Kilda matchup for defenders over the past 10 games.
Yep.
Is this fixturing alone? A lot of people would have traded out Luke Ryan last week. Comes out and scores a 97. Which was
the best score for Fremantle, I believe.
Oh, yeah, actually, I think you're right.
Sharpie. By 1. But.
And there was a good point. I'm forgetting who this person was. There was a good point. I put out a tweet talking about Luke Ryan the other day, and the host of the AFLW Free Kick podcast, I'm forgetting her name, which is bad of me, but she made a point basically saying that when you correlate Luke Ryan scores and Jeremy Sharp scores together, it sort of suggests the Freo game style of a bit more sort of switching back and getting, that switch kick across there.
Yep.
So the last 2 games obviously saw Sharp go absolutely terrible, which coincided with Luke Ryan scoring. So with Jeremy Sharp and Luke Ryan sitting at the top, does this suggest that maybe our fears of the game style for Freo will maybe a bit overblown? And in a game like this where Sydney obviously maybe didn't care as much, is this fixture combined with that enough to maybe launch back into someone like a Luke Ryan or a Jordan Clark if you didn't have them?
The launching in is tough for me, but I think it does suggest that these guys who have been getting so much airtime, Ryan Clark and now Hayden Young, will get heaps of airtime this week. I think for me anyway, it's enough to just go, let's just sit tight on these guys.
If you have them, I think you hold them.
Yeah, and look, the thing about Luke Ryan that makes it tough for him particularly to launch into, because if outside of what has now happened to Alex Pearce and what he's done the last couple of weeks, this would just be prime time for people to be jumping onto Luke Ryan. But I think what is now interesting is, yes, you've got this good run coming up, but how does the fact that he's probably going to be playing on better forward, largely more accountable, does that impact his scoring, or does the cheap stuff that he just gets on the switch, is he going to get that regardless of who he's playing on?
It was Eloise who I'll give the shout out to, and I've just clicked on her profile, and it's her birthday, so happy birthday, Eloise. The little balloons came up on the Twitter profile, so shout out to Eloise from the Free Kick podcast.
Make up for forgetting their name.
But yes, I do think...
It's just like, does he get points regardless of the matchup because the points he gets are so irrelevant. Matchup? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I think the matchup... Sometimes I might think is the opposite because it's dependent on what the team that he's versing is allowing to give up.
But I mean in terms of his accountability on like an individual opponent. So like let's say he's playing against a premium forward.
But they brought in another key defender, didn't they? To replace...
Is Draper a key defender? Did he?
I think he
play
is.
Back there?
Yeah.
So
where was he?
Regardless,
Yeah.
Alex Pearce is like an All-Australian fullback level. So he's having
He'd have
to play.
to chip in more.
He's playing a different role.
Right.
But like I kind of think he's still, the points that he gets are just on that switch kick, and so it's like you said, largely dependent on what the opposition team does, rather than like what role he's playing.
So he goes up against Richmond this week. Richmond traditionally haven't cared about that. Do you think it's different now? Have you noticed much watching them this year that they maybe don't give up? I mean, Nick Newman just went 144.
Yeah, so I think you've got evidence to the contrary.
I didn't think Nick Newman was getting a lot on those types of plays, though. Like, it was a little bit more of the Jordan Clark variety.
If you traded him out 2 weeks ago, that's different psychologically to trade him back in now than what you might be considering. You've never owned him.
It is psychologically, but it
shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, in when you're just using logic and that sort of thing. But there is a difference in terms of the way you look at it. I do think that there is a case where you trade him back in if you have traded him out because of this run. I'd be more keen. I think I'm more keen on Jordan Clark than I am with Luke Ryan. I think his floor is a lot higher.
Okay.
And his ceiling we've seen to be comparable. So I think if you don't have Jordan Clark, he's definitely someone I'd be pushing to get. Someone like a Hayden Young, I don't know if a run like this actually...
Because of the new role he's playing.
The new role he's playing. I mean, maybe he kicks some snags, but we've talked about him. He loves it tough. He loves it contested.
He does.
I mean, he didn't have any tackles, but normally that's his bread and butter. I don't see him as a guy who's really feasting on these open, uncontested marks as much as maybe Sarong, Brayshaw, Clark, Ryan.
Potentially. I personally have bigger fish to fry than Hayden Young, which is a sad state of affairs.
But the matchups are good for all Freo players, so I think that is definitely something to keep in mind. Geelong also have a good couple of rounds coming up for defenders, and this is maybe more important for someone like a Luke Holmes. Did you see that?
Luke Holmes, is it his brother?
What's his name? Max Holmes.
Safe as houses, you reckon?
Safe as houses.
Not his name, apparently.
Yeah, safe as houses, old Max Holmes. And he was 101 on the weekend, so just your standard ton. But he moved to defence.
Doesn't excite me. Doesn't get my juices flowing.
Well, listen, he moved to defence. Tom Stewart moved into the midfield. He had the most CBAs on the weekend, Tom Stewart did. Does a Max Holmes in a Tom Stewart-less backline excite you more? Dead air there?
Well, I don't think it excites me any more or less, because I think there could be a case to say that
Stewart moved back there.
Well, what Stewart does back there in ways frees up guys like Holmes to do what they want to do, and then you could, I mean, people could be entitled to argue the opposite point, which is remove Tom Stewart, and then Holmes has more to do. I think defensively they play very different roles. Like Stewart is like a intercept and then sort of a commander, whereas Holmes provides a lot of bounce.
Yeah,
so
he's a bit more up and about at the stoppages.
Neither here nor there for me in terms of excitement.
Okay. I think it is just interesting with that switch because their run is better for defenders than it is for midfielders. So if Holmes is going to stay, I think, in that half-back role, I think that's better over this little stretch than it is if he's staying in the midfield just based on the opponent. So that is one to weigh up.
Who else has got a good run?
GWS has got a good run. Carlton this week is maybe a little bit tougher, but after that it frees up a lot. So your Tom Greens, I think you stay patient with that. Few less tags coming his way. North Melbourne, not for the next few rounds, but after rounds 19, they have a good run to sort of finish the year. I don't know if it's enough to save someone like an LDU, but your players like a Sheasel, I think that definitely positively impacts him. Port Adelaide also have a good run coming up for their midfielders. So tough game against the Saints with some of the guys going 90s, I believe. But after this round, it gets a little bit easier, and basically they have a pretty free run through to the end of the season. So they got the Bulldogs this week, then Gold Coast, Richmond, Carlton, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and Freo. So of those teams, there's only, would you say Carlton might tag, Sydney will tag, and after that, it's probably no other taggers. So only 2 tags in their last 8 rounds is a good thing for someone like a Butters, someone like a Rosie as well. So I think they have a good run. And then in terms of rucks, Max has a good run after the next 2. They're a bit average, but after the next 2, he's got a good run. And then North Melbourne has a tough 2 rounds. So the next 2 rounds are tough for Tristan Sherry. He comes up against Gold Coast and then Sydney, which are the 2 tougher matchups. But after that, it's very, very green. So, interesting conundrum for my team. But Carlton, Geelong, Richmond, West Coast, and Western Bulldogs, Hawthorn, all green to finish out the rest of the season. So 2 reds and then 6 greens in a row, basically, for
that'd be the old
Sherry.
Cinderella story, wouldn't it? If he just hung around to the end of the year in people's teams,
he might come back into my side.
You really didn't lose anything.
Yeah.
Because everyone was, that's it, right? Everyone was expecting, this guy will give us some value and he'll improve, and then
we'll move
him to English and Marshall, and it just kind of hasn't been the way.
Hasn't happened. So, the ruck's been interesting this year.
For sure.
On the flip side, hard fixtures.
Oh, okay. Hard.
Yes. Red.
Oh, right. Sorry.
North defenders. Yep. So this is an interesting discussion point when it comes to players like Fisher. And he obviously went down on the weekend with an injury.
Not what the sub-tactical told us.
Yeah, no, the sub-tactical. But apparently he was limping around, and there's been some people saying he was
injured fish,
corky or something like that. If he returns back, because he got subbed out and he was on a good score at the time in terms of for his game time.
Yeah.
He comes up against, who do they play? They've got Gold Coast, Sydney, Carlton in their next 3, which are all pretty red. They do have a Richmond and a Hawthorn matchup in there as well. So they're a couple of green teams, but the rest are kind of middle of the table. But the next 3 rounds are tough for defenders. Is that enough to kind of spook you a little bit if you're a bit to and fro with the Zach Fisher?
But the question is who to in the forward line? That's kind of it probably doesn't spook you because who are you going to trade in?
Yeah.
You know
there's a few options putting their hands up now, but they also have tough runs. So there's something to keep in mind. Western Bulldogs have a tough run for defenders. So when you're considering someone like Bailey Dale compared to some of those other Freo defenders or other people like that as a bit of a pod option.
Okay, keep that in mind.
They might be better.
Yep.
Carlton mids have got a tough run coming up. So maybe if you didn't have a Sam Walsh, you might look to maybe take that one on.
Yep.
Adelaide mids have a tough run as well. It'll be interesting to see where some of the tags go. They tried to tag Dawson in the first half, then he killed it in the second half. Whether they move to a Rankin, and this is another person who might be a hot topic this week, Isaac Rankin as a trade-in target. But they do also have a pretty tough run coming up. So, again, another reason why I prefer to see Rory Laird off half-back, because their run's a bit friendlier for there. And then Richmond rounds out the tough run with their midfielders. I think Richmond's run's tough because they don't get to verse themselves, obviously.
Makes it hard.
So Timmy Taranto, again, another one I think we just hold off on.
You want the Richmond players in the old intra-club match, don't you?
The intra-club, the midweek bloody Max Fisher. That's the strategy chat in terms of the fixtures there. The main thing I think there, which is the most interesting, I think, is the Freo run over the next few rounds. We could see some big scores from those boys there. It's about picking which ones, though.
Well, hopefully in 2 weeks' time, I'm not regretting that Jordan Clark move as much as I am currently.
Hopefully. Let's talk about some chopping block players.
Correct.
Hopefully we've all got our rookies off the field, right? You've got your rookies off.
No.
By name.
Well, yeah.
Maybe not by score.
No. Still got rookie type scoring getting around at the off shorts.
But your number one priority is still to get those genuine rookies off the field, unless you've got fucking Ollie Dempsey. He's killing it. Back-to-back tons.
What a beast.
Which is frustrating if you traded him out before then. But let's talk about some of these other players that could potentially go. We talked about him before. Hayden Young. How urgent do you think it is to get a player like Hayden Young out? What do you think he scores this week, I guess is maybe the question.
Well, I'm always about getting Hayden Young off, but I don't know about getting him out. because I've
It's the
got
top knot that does it for you. Hey?
It is, yeah. I don't mind it. I got other things to do, but I also just feel like with that run coming up, it kind of goes against a little bit of like what you look to do this time of season. No, the 37 or whatever it was, that can't be excused. Like,
No.
If there's anyone who wants to excuse it, it's me.
But we saw like Clayton Oliver. There's a cautionary tale, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
he
true.
goes 26 and then backs up with a 109 the next week.
Yeah, I think there's every chance Hayden Young can get back to decent scoring, just around the corner. But I guess that's luxury season for you as well. Would you consider, like, if Hayden Young is the worst thing that's happening in your team right now, maybe you consider moving him to a Luke Ryan or to a Jordan Clark at this stage if you don't have
Well, I think
either
that's
of
an
those two.
upgrade. I do think it's an upgrade. Like last week, I left him off the best boys.
Because in that
And
situation...
we were outraged. We were shocked.
It's correct. But in that situation, you're looking at... You're not sacrificing this run because you're bringing in a player from the same team.
Yes.
And you're just going to a better
You
role.
just go into someone who's a bit thirstier. A bit more of a sponge. So I think you can go. Whether or not he's your highest priority might be a different story.
Yeah.
The thing that's more concerning to me is the slight change in... And it's not a huge role change, but he's going from like 70, 80% CBAs to like 50, 60%. So he's playing a bit more of that forward line.
If he was doing 50% CBAs and going to half back, then we'd be having a different discussion.
Yeah. But it's the forward line, which is a wasteland.
It's killer.
This guy, I think, is probably more priority for a team like yours.
LD Yuck.
LD. Don't know if that's a U, but it works.
It made the yeah sound.
Yeah, LDU, I think it's time to go. I don't think that... I mean, he could drop a big score on your head, but he's clogging up that midfield spot.
He's so
and he's
cloggy.
worth a bit. You can get to him to someone decent pretty easily, is the other positive thing. So I think that if you've got LDU in your team, maybe you trade him after his buy round. It worked all right, but I think now it's time to cut ties and trade him out to someone who you can rely on a bit more and has a bit more of a ceiling moving forward. So I think he can go. Is he someone maybe in your trade plans? Or
Yeah, he definitely is this week.
Now,
Yeah.
the next guy on the list here is Nick Martin. He's a guy I traded out last week.
It's proved to be an alright call.
Feel
so
all right about the call. Now, he's been good, and he still had 27 touches on the weekend. So it is a bit more on the luxury side of things.
Who you trading first, Nick Martin or Hayden Young?
It's a tough question. I think I'm actually trading Hayden Young out first. I think that even in a not so good role, Nick Martin can score.
He's thirstier.
He's thirstier. I think he's more high up in the team's usage chart, if I'm to use a basketball phrase, like that they want it in his hands more than the team wants it in Hayden Young's hands. Which is weird.
I think Fremantle want the ball in Hayden Young's hands, but I think he's just higher in the pecking order for thirstiness of the players in his team.
Yeah, well, you've got. I mean, I think he's like top 5 in terms of disposals in the comp. So like he's almost the number 1 usage guy. He and Merritt are head and shoulders above everyone else in that team. Whereas in Freo, you've got so many other guys vying for that ball.
Spongy boys.
So I'd probably go Hayden Young before Nick Martin, but I could be swayed either way. And then the forward line, I've got Fisher and Sexton there on a tie. Fisher, if he's gone, obviously I think he's a trade. You could mount an argument that you trade him anyway. Sexton's an interesting one because he scored another 79? But his role was okay.
Yeah.
We had Flanders playing more mid. I mean, played, I think, high CBAs for Gold Coast.
He did, yeah. He was almost exclusively mid from what I saw on the weekend.
Yeah, so I think... And I think Sexton had 20 disposals.
Yeah, Flanders was the highest CBA outside of Wits, so...
Yeah, so whilst the score, I think, is not great, I hold out a little bit of hope still for Sexton to be serviceable. So... And it's that, like we said, I feel like we repeat ourselves every fucking week with these forward lines, but who do you go to? Now, we had some great scorers on the weekend.
Dylan
Moore had 120.
Yeah.
Rankin had a 115.
Yeah.
So you look at players like that, I'm pretty sure Grind Myers had a 90-something. You look at those players and think that's a good upgrade, and whilst I could potentially agree with you, I also see a scenario where Rankin gets tagged this week. Dylan Moore doesn't kick 3 goals and sits forward and
doesn't play West
Coast and go off there, and you've lost points on a trade to those players.
I feel like the forward line's going to be a bit like that for the rest of the year as well. Like somebody that's been popular name in the last couple of weeks is Jai Simpkins. So he goes like a massive 130, then he breaks hearts and gets rested, then he comes back in a similar role and gives a couple of shit scores. Like it's going to be all over the shop.
I want to float a question to you. What do you think the value of a 23rd premium in the forward line is this year compared to trading and upgrading? Like, say you get an upgrade from like a Hayden Young to a Luke Ryan, or get a Hayden Young up to a Max Holmes or something like that. What do you think that trade is compared to getting a 23rd premium in your forward line? Maybe trying to get to a Brian Myers and doing a bit of Lupe fiasco with him and Sexton.
I do love Lupe.
Yeah.
I actually think there is some serious value in it. The thing too that you have to consider with your Lupe fiasco as well is when in the round you can get a bit of that, because depending on the players that you've got parked there on the pine, you may have playing players, which presents an issue there. And second of all, if you've got players that play early in the round and then you don't get to look at scores that you want to look at, like that, because let's think about it. You've got your top. Let's say you've got your top four forwards: Caldwell, Heaney, Flanders, and Zorko.
Yep.
So they're not guys that you're considering for.
No, they're always going to sit in your field.
So you got your 23rd premium. You've got 2 guys on your field that maybe you're considering for a loop. The stars need to align for that to be an 8-week proposition where you're always going to have the availability in the right order.
And you're going to pick the right one.
Exactly.
The problem I find, and
it's kind of tough.
Like, say the guy you loop on first, you put the E on him, and Sexton comes out and scores an 84. Like, what do you do with that? Do you take it?
Yeah.
Do you go on and try and get something better and risk losing 15, 20 points with that? Like,
it's looping with your rookies early in the season is far easier because you just go, hey, look, I'm happy to take 55.
It's like, okay, there's only so many points you can lose, but when you're looping premiums, I feel like the risk is a little bit higher, and I don't know. I feel like I'd fuck it up every week,
especially for the fact that over the next 8 weeks, all the stars would have to align in terms of the games in the right order. You having the appropriate red dot at the certain stage in the round. I just think that there will be only minimal opportunities for it to work really well.
Yeah,
but it's a luxurious position to be in, regardless, isn't it? So
you could do so. Like Brian Myers was a guy I threw out there because he's still cheapish. He's 720,000. 720,000. He plays the 4:30 game on the Saturday. Gold Coast play when do they play? Bloody hell. They play the 1:45. So Gold Coast play first. You put the E on Sexton. If he goes shit, you put Brian Myers on. But then I still just have the question, well, what is your line? And the line is very hard to pick. Like, if it's an 80... I mean, maybe you're losing
back 50s 2 weeks ago. Didn't you?
Maybe you're losing points. Grind Myers goes 120. You've missed out on points there. You don't go at Grind Myers goes 50, 65, which he's done. You lose points there. So it's a bit more. It just feels a bit more like gambling in a way.
This whole fucking thing's gambling. It cuts my head in. I feel like an addict. I'm not even spending any money.
Yeah. So it's not something that I've had much experience with. I think it's more of a Supercoach thing. Where you've got those limited trades, you don't have the ability to just trade in and out every week based on matchups. But there might be something to it, especially in the forward lines this year. So something for people to consider.
We're being distracted, mate. We're meant to be chopping, not adding more people to our team.
Let's go. We'll start adding people and start going to the trade targets. If you want to flick that one over there. Broken this down into, I haven't ranked them per se, but in positions here. So starting with some defender options. 2 players there's really 3 players I like this week. Max Holmes, Nick Newman, and Luke Ryan. Nick Newman we haven't talked about.
Luke Ryan's not on your list.
I can't fit that many people in there, mate. So let's talk about Nick Newman.
Change your font size.
Yeah, probably should. But then people can't read the thing. Anyway, Nick Newman, he's coming off a 140. Is that a case of you missed the Richmond matchup, you probably miss his pop score, or is this something we should see a bit more of like last season?
Who do the Blues go into next couple
So they play the Giants this week.
Not particularly juicy, is it?
They've been leaking more to defenders recently, but not like a Richmond level matchup. They go then Bulldogs, North, Port, which North and Port are actually... North's actually a tough matchup for defenders, according to DFS. Port is average. But then they finished the season going Collingwood, Hawthorn, West Coast, and St Kilda. So their last 4 games are really good. I just don't know if there's the immediate kind of sugar hit. Originally, when I traded in Newman, the first 2 weeks is what I was looking at.
You were kind of targeting that.
And then see what happens from there. I'm going to find it hard to trade him out now.
Nick Martin to Nick Newman's just a straight swap now.
Straight swap.
2K. You
Newman's got a better role.
make.
Yeah. Newman has a better role.
So I see that as a luxury. So if you're going through your team and you're thinking, well, Nick Martin is the highest priority guy that I want, and I can't generate any more cash to get to someone that I, particularly want, maybe it's Whitfield or something like that, then I see a straight swap between Nick Martin and Nick Newman not being the worst thing in the world.
So I want to look at when Zach Williams went out and into the forward line. That was round 10. So since then, let's have a look and see what he's been averaging. A little bit of stats on the fly here. Nick Newman, since round 10, has been averaging 108 points per game, which, again, it's a smaller sample size of about 6 games, and that's not even including 2 rounds before that he had a 145. So since round 8, he's been averaging 110, which is kind of similar to what he was doing at the back end of last year. So there definitely could be something to it. I obviously have traded him in, so take that for what you will. I was looking at the matchup last weekend as a big reason for it, which worked out well. But I do think there are still some good matchups coming up. It might just not be for the next 2 or 3 weeks. So I can see him there. Max Holmes. I quite like Max Holmes. I think of all of the options, he is probably the most reliable. I think he's going to put up a decent score this week against Hawthorn. Where do you sit Max Holmes versus Luke Ryan? You've probably got polar opposites in terms of one's a ceiling and floor guy, one's a steady, safe as houses guy. Who do you prefer in your team with 8 weeks to go?
It's crazy looking at Max Holmes' stats. For 8 weeks, he effectively hasn't gone below 100. There's one game there where we went 95, but then in the first 7 rounds of the season, didn't go above 100.
Yeah, he was Jordan Clark levels.
Like, yeah, it was sort of like that. So,
who do you prefer if you're looking for the end of the season?
Well, can I say that like depending on where you're ranked and what you hope to achieve between now and the end of the year, whether it's your overall ranking, whether it's your matchups in your league against your mates, whether it's whatever it is, that might dictate your choice in this instance. Like if you want a player who is going to every week in your matchups against your mates is going to give you the reliable ton. You're not going to have any of that fluctuation. You're going to have that 100 locked in every week. Happy days. And if you're just like trying to reef yourself up from the depths of hell to just
have a crack,
salvage your season, and you want a guy who could potentially give you 163 weeks in a row, it's Luke Ryan.
Yeah.
Like,
Luke Ryan would be higher owned.
So ranking then, maybe you think, well, Max Holmes, if you think they're going to average similarly over the next...
It's interesting because, and it's, again, goes back to that psychology you were talking about before. Some people might have traded out Luke Ryan to bring him back in. Would be difficult. I mean, he's got the 150 break even, so he'll be cheaper unless maybe he goes up a little bit if he goes nuts. But at this time of year, I don't care too much about that, with only so limited time to go. But yeah, very interesting discussion there. But I do like Max Holmes as a trade target if you're looking for a defender. I went into the mids. Josh Dunkley, it seems a bit points chasing, but to me, he's safe. He's that sort of guy that's not ever going to get tagged. He's got a solid enough matchup this week, so I think he's still a good target. A bit more expensive this week now. Connor Rosie, I'm more keen to jump into now. I think their run frees up a little bit more. He started off well, but then faded towards the end of the game.
He started off really well.
But I think he is going to be better for the run, and I think their matchups get good. And Caleb Sarong is another one I've chucked on here for my midfield as well. Just again, similar kind of run going up, and he's a bit cheaper now. He's dropped below the 900,000. Has not been putting up very good scores recently. 3 games in a row below 100. So people might be losing faith, but I think he's going to come good.
Yeah, even the 2 games before that, or 4 games before that, he's only just turned up. Like he's nothing over 110 in the last 8 weeks.
He was killing it in the first half of this game, and James Jordan went to him, switched off Jordan Clark, and went to Caleb Sarong. So I think he had like 67 points something in the first half, and then maybe like 30 in the second half. So Richmond, Hawthorn, Melbourne, West Coast, Essendon. I don't see a tag in many of those games. So
No, it's a very good run. And, like, you only have to look back to what he did against Richmond earlier in the season. He's given a 140. But he's had an interesting year. First 3 rounds, everyone's going, why didn't we pick Caleb Strong? He's a gun. And then from there on out, other than the Richmond performance, it's just kind of very like an average sort of midfielder score. So, the run is juicy, but
yeah, I mean, last time we played Richmond, he went 140, and Richmond just let him do whatever the fuck he wanted. So,
I think Luke Ryan went huge that game too.
Yeah, I think he went to 160. So, yeah, I think I like him as well. The forwards, I'm going to keep leaving Jai Caldwell in until you have him in your side. So
thank you, mate. I appreciate it.
He's my number one target for the forwards. And then a couple of players we've kind of touched on already, Isaac Rankin and Dylan Moore. Which do you like out of those two better? Isaac Rankin or Dylan Moore? I'll give you who they're playing this week. So Isaac Rankin is versing the Brisbane Lions, and Dylan Moore.
He's got Geelong.
So
the Geelong matchup stands out there. It goes Geelong, Freo, and then Collingwood. What a Freo like for? He's a small high half forward.
Yeah, he's
Dylan
basically
Moore,
a forward that pushes up. Who did you want? Collingwood for forwards? Freo for forwards is a slight negative.
I think I might take Dylan Moore because Rankin I see as a definite tag target for teams. We saw in the first half of that game. Yeah. And it's not dominating in just a fantasy pig sense.
No, he took the game away, really, from Giants.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to go...
But they still didn't really lock him down in the second half. Like, they took the tag off Dawson, but it wasn't like it went... Because he was a forward first as a player.
Yeah.
Do you think that enables him to be better suited to handle tags than more traditional midfielders that aren't used to being defended?
Just because he can go forward and do what he typically did, yeah. I think I'm still taking Dylan Moore. Dylan Moore's one of those ones where like we're just hoping and praying that at some point they go, you're a midfielder.
He's also got, I think, more of a fantasy-friendly game. Like, Rankin had an awesome game. And, yes, 115 is good, but it's still not a 120 plus, and he was easily best on ground in that game. And Dylan Moore's, he's put up a 130 already this season. Like, he's had several 110 plus games.
The unfortunate reality is they're both players that if you trade them in and they give you 60...
You would be shocked.
Exactly. You kind of go, oh, well, yeah, should have seen that coming.
Yeah. So, as good as they were on the weekend, the confidence there is still... It's growing, but it's not. It's still not... I know I'm trading this guy in expecting to get 100.
Listen to Dylan Moore's score since round 7. 114, 116. Fuck yeah, let's go. Round 9, 71. Then he goes 62. Then he goes 69. I mean, don't mind it. But round 12, 132. Then 83, 77, 127.
Yeah.
So he's like,
it's a roller coaster.
4 games where he goes 110 plus and like comfortably in a couple of them, and then everything else.
5 out of 6 games he goes below 90.
It's kind of just what you're going to get, isn't it?
Yeah. It's interesting. It makes it hard to pull the trigger on a Sexton trade to a player like that because on any given week you're losing points potentially. But if he, what if I throw Grown Myers into that mix? Do you like him any more than those players?
I did until 3 weeks ago.
He's got Hawthorn, Collingwood, Bulldogs in his next 3. He laid 8 tackles and 9 tackles in his last 2 games. That's the thing that kind of catches my eye the most.
But it's an anomaly compared to the rest of the
previous,
year. But prior to that, he was scoring well, so he was just doing it through different avenues. So
he went on a 3-game stretch where he's gone 65, 52, 70. What's different there? And Geelong have been struggling more so. That was when I thought, okay, maybe he goes well when Geelong goes well.
I almost think with those 3 guys, if you pick one of them and just hold them for the rest of the season, the law of averages will just say that whatever you get week to week, you're going to cop, but you're not going to lose out massively on any 3 of those guys if you just hold them for the rest of the year compared to having one of the others of them.
And this is where the 23rd premium has merit, I think.
He plays for Essendon.
He does play for Essendon, but it also applies here. It's just... Yeah, whether or not you do that instead of maybe upgrading a midfielder or a defender or something like that, maybe going Hayden Young outs is the tough question. If you have the luxury to do so, I don't really know what the right answer is. Something I'll be weighing up myself. I don't think I have the money to do that this week, but potentially in the following weeks. But yeah, tough calls.
For sure.
We'll see. Lots to think about this week. Anything else you want to throw up there?
Not at this stage, mate. We'll just have to wait for the live show and see what's what.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be, of course, going live on a Friday afternoon, 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you guys are there or you will be square. And we'll be talking through our captains, big boys, answering your questions. If you do have some questions before then, though, and you cannot wait or you want to make sure you get your questions answered before or not on this show, go to askmeonq, spelled qu.com/Ball Boys, and you can get your questions in there and answered by myself, which will send through a little audio message to your inbox there that you can listen to in your own privacy there, away from all your friends, away from listening eyes. You can get the tissues out if you want, but
Listening eyes.
Did I say that? Oh, it's a long pod. Anyway,
I need to get my eyes checked if they're not listening.
I don't listen with anything anyway. So let's go from there, guys. And if you do like the podcast, give this one a big thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating and review. And we'll see you guys on Friday. Bye.